What's good, everybody? This is Dion Smo from Smo's Modern Culinary Arts, and I was on Instagram and some breaking news, some breaking news in the fight world of the UFC combat sport. Um, Nate Diaz just issued a cryptic message on his timeline. And this cryptic message that he writes isn't what people think it is. And quote unquote, I will read it. Nate Diaz just posted on his Instagram, "There will be no rematch with Jorge Masvidal. The match was over before it started. Going on tour, goodbye fight game." You say, well, Dion, well that just means he's just going away to heal. It doesn't mean that. And I've read a lot of comments on Nate Diaz's page from haters and trolls, and it's from these kids who know nothing about fighting, know nothing about combat sport. You know, these virgins who go to the UFC fights with the shirts that say, "I practice jiu-jitsu. Don't mess with me, I practice jiu-jitsu" shirts. But in reality, they don't practice jiu-jitsu and they can't fight. But that's not what it means. And I know what those people, those guys, those virgins who wear those shirts at the UFC events, "I practice jiu-jitsu," but in reality, they can't fight. They're saying, well, that means Jorge Masvidal retired Nate Diaz. It doesn't mean that. See, me being woken up out of the Matrix, I can see past subliminal, and I know what Nate Diaz is talking about. I told you guys. Everybody laughed at me. I told you guys. This WWE-esque match, entertainment match between these two was strictly for pay-per-view. Pay-per-view buys and ratings. This was the most WWE-esque, overhyped fight I have ever seen. The BMF belt. All entertainment. It was all hype. Dwayne Johnson in the middle of the fucking weigh-in. Give me a fucking break. What a joke. I told you guys this match was WWE-esque and it was going to be rigged. Madison Square Garden. What Nate Diaz is subliminally saying in this post, think about these words. The match was over before it started. What do you think that means? I know what that means. It means exactly what it says. It was over before it started, meaning, AKA, the match was fucking fixed. But you motherfuckers want to believe that this match, it was all, they were really, duking it out. Which they were. But, well, you say, Dion, well, if the match was fixed, how did they fix it? I'm glad you asked. You see, Nate Diaz, Dana White didn't give Nate Diaz a scoop. Dana White did give Jorge the scoop behind the scenes. He made these two fighters really think they were really going to duke it out. This is how Dana White fixed this fight and had it made up in his mind to have this match rigged for a Jorge Masvidal fight. You see, Dana White knew that Nate Diaz, you could look at the guy and the guy bleeds. Or Nate Diaz can just sneeze and this guy has got a bloody nose. Or he could just, bleed. He bleeds, the guy just bleeds easily. Dana White knew that. And so Dana White went to the doctor of this fight, who was in charge of the New York commissions. And he says when Nate Diaz takes that blow, he starts bleeding profusely, the fight's going to be stopped, and the match is going to be awarded to Jorge Masvidal. You say, well, Dion, I don't believe that. Well, I don't care what you fucking believe. That's what fucking happened. And this cryptic message by Nate Diaz is starting to prove that. Why didn't they stop the match in that Conor McGregor part 2 fight? Huh? Nate Diaz's eye was 2 times worse in that fight. Bleeding all over. McGregor has blood all over. Why didn't they stop that fight? Oh, and by the way, Nate Diaz's cut Nate Diaz had the same cut against Anthony Pettis, which was kind of worse, and they let the fight just keep going on. But then they stopped the fight versus the Jorge Masvidal fight after 2 rounds. Oh, but there's nothing suspicious about that, right? Sheep in the Matrix. But Nate Diaz is one of the realest fighters in the game, and I hope he does not retire because of this. Nate Diaz I hold in high regard because he's one of the few fighters who he's not on PEDs. He's an honest fighter, and he's real. You know what I mean? He sees past the bullshit. I believe the UFC and Dana White are trying to slowly take down Nate Diaz. Because Dana White doesn't like Nate Diaz. Like, let's just keep it a buck. And Dana White's crooked too. Dana White's a Freemason. But that's another time. But Nate Diaz inspires me. I hope he's not going to retire. I hope he's just taking some time off. But this, to me, proves my point already that this fight was rigged from the get-go. And it's beginning that the UFC is starting to become more WWE-esque as we speak. Like, everything's for pay-per-view buys, It's entertainment, you know what I mean? It's not WWE. It's just, this is actual combat. But these bigger fights for the pay-per-view pay-per-view buys are all rigged. And this is where the UFC is becoming. And that's another thing too. Dana White is a crook. Dana White is very crooked. And Ben Askren too. He's trying to take out Ben Askren too. Because Dana White doesn't like Ben Askren, and Ben Askren sees past the bullshit. You guys aren't going to convince me otherwise. That fight between Jorge and Ben Askren was rigged. They told Ben Askren, you're going to run in. This is how he's going to hit you with the flying knee. You're going to run to it. Run into the flying knee. You say, well, Dion, I don't believe that. I don't care what you believe. That's what happened. Salute Nate Diaz, Nick Diaz. Realest in the game. Fucking piss. Sheep.